everyone. This is Marc Sabatella from Outside Shore Music, home of mastering MuseScore, and welcome to the MuseScore Café. Sorry for the late start, some technical issues, but I think that they're. I think I got it all figured out. So anyhow, welcome people, and welcome also anyone who is just joining us as a guest. That is the thing I was playing with, is to make sure that people who wanted to join us as guests who are not already members of the community would be able to do that, because I know I had problems last time I tried doing that, or at least some people had trouble. So I've got that all going here, and it looks like it's working okay. So welcome to anyone who is a guest, a newcomer here, and that is our main focus here. So whether or not you are watching this live as a newcomer to this community, or maybe you're relatively new to MuseScore but you've been in this community for a while, or maybe you're watching this later because it shows up in your YouTube search or whatever, welcome all. And what I'm going to be doing here is, this is a session especially for newcomers to MuseScore, in that I'm going to be focusing on the really basic things that I think everyone needs to know. Along the way, I typically find there's one or two things in there somewhere that even people who have been doing this for a long time don't know about. And right off the bat, I'm going to share one of them with you. This is one of the things that I've shared this before, so many of you who have heard me before know about this, but this is something I used MuseScore for probably a couple years before I ever became aware that this was a thing. So, and it's really one of the most important things to learn. So, what do we got going right here? We are looking at MuseScore, and give me 1 second here. No, we're not looking at MuseScore because I'm not sharing my screen. So that's one of the things I didn't get going. So give me a moment here. Now you're looking at MuseScore. Okay, so we are looking at MuseScore. And I have, my computer is a laptop and it has a touchpad, as do, many other laptops out there. And on a touchpad, the way you normally scroll, is anyone else frozen? I look like I'm moving to me over here. I'm going to type in here, if you see things freeze, try refreshing your browser, or log out, log in. There we go. Okay, so as I was saying, a touchpad typically has a gesture where two-finger swipe scrolls, right? Two-finger swipe scrolls your score, which is all well and good when you want to scroll vertically. The question is, what happens if you want to scroll horizontally? Now, my touchpad lets me do this. I can scroll horizontally by just using my two fingers this way. But a lot of touchpads don't do that. A lot of touchpads, especially on older machines, especially older Windows machines, don't allow you to do this. So if you want to scroll horizontally, hold Shift while scrolling vertically. And this works for almost every single touchpad, not just in MuseScore, across all programs. And somehow I didn't really know that for many years, and I realize a lot of other people don't know that also because it comes up fairly often. So, but the same is true with the mouse wheel. If you have a physical mouse and it's got a wheel, that scroll wheel typically will scroll vertically. And if you want to scroll horizontally, some of them let you kind of push the wheel sideways and it kind of awkwardly scrolls, but maybe not all that convenient. But usually Shift plus that scroll wheel will do the same thing. For those of you who have a ThinkPad, which has that little pencil eraser, little doohickey in the middle, and that's your pointing device, there is a way of doing that there too, but I've forgotten what it is. And I just looked it up and posted it in the community, and I don't remember what the thing is. So If anyone has one and wants to talk about that, we can talk about it. But so this is one of the first things that people often need to figure out is how to move around in a score. And so that's that's something that I wanted to talk about here. Now, one of the other things that you will notice here is that this score, I have it set up so that it scrolls vertically. In other words, the pages are stacked on top of each other. I think by default, you normally don't have that. And if you want it, this layout here where the pages kind of scroll vertically like that is really nice for things like piano music or vocal music, things where there's multiple systems per page anyhow, and it's kind of a drag to have to shift your view up. But for things like this, where it's really just one system per page, you really want to read the pages side by side, and that's the way it is by default. So to get back there, I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, and then under Canvas, I'm going to say Scroll Pages Horizontal. And now the pages are laid out horizontally, so that matches more what probably most of you are used to seeing. All right, so I'm going to stay on the subject of navigation for just a minute or two longer. You will notice that as I'm scrolling, you see scroll bars appear. Well, all you have to do is hover there in that area, and you can get to those scroll bars. And same with the bottom. If you hover towards the bottom, you get a scroll bar towards the bottom so that you can scroll horizontally. So this is in MuseScore 4. MuseScore 3 and earlier did not have scroll bars. MuseScore 4 has them, but they're designed in such a way that they don't take up space. Now, personally, I never use them because I find that swiping is plenty fast, especially if you have acceleration turned on in your mouse so that you can just go swipe like that and it swipes really fast. But then also you should know the home key moves to the beginning of your score and the end key moves to the end. If you don't have a physical end or home key on your keyboard, it's usually FN left is home and FN right is end. FN left is usually home. FN right is usually end. So that works on almost every single keyboard I've ever used that doesn't have physical end keys, and that includes Macs, Windows computers, and Chromebooks. So a lot of you are having problems, huh? Is everyone experiencing audio problems? Because I think my internet connection should be as fast as it's going to go, and I haven't gotten a lot of messages on my screen about internet connection issues. So okay, good. It's not at my end. That's good to know. Okay, so those are different ways of moving around in your score. So now that we know how to move around in the score, the next thing I guess we need to know is then how we're going to create a new score and enter some notes into it. So was there anything else I needed to talk about as far as moving around? If there is, if anyone has questions. Oh, Michael had an observation about horizontal page versus continuous view. I will tell you what. So Michael's asking about this view here where we have a page. This looks like a physical page that's got actual margins and everything, and then here's page 2, and then page 3, etc. MuseScore does have, if you go to the lower right, you'll see page view, and you can change that to continuous view. Continuous view is one long strip. A lot of people really like continuous view, especially when first entering notes, because then you don't have any distractions of jumping around from system to system and so forth, and there's nothing wrong with it. I will just say that I find it a little overwhelming personally. I somehow find comfort in seeing the physical page and the margins and where stuff is. That's me. But they accomplish essentially the same thing. And yes, if you scroll over here and you're like, oh, wait a minute, what instrument is this here? You can look off to the side there. It'll tell you it's trombone. So yeah, this totally works, and if you zoom in more, you can see the word trombone bigger. So this works, and if you're comfortable with continuous view, by all means use it, and I do use it sometimes. times. But for some reason, I just find the page views more convenient. All right, so that's this sort of basic how you're looking at your score. Let's go create a new score. When you first fire up MuseScore, this is what you see. You see a list of your recent scores, and you see a big friendly button that says New Score. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit my New Score button to create a new score. And I am going to then choose. You have options here of either creating from a template or choosing instruments. If you choose instruments, you can create for any group of instruments you want. You can have it be for flute, viola, and snare drum or whatever you want. Creating from template, the templates have a number of preset things, like there's SATB template, there's a jazz big band template, there's a symphony orchestra template, right? All these different, here's a wind quintet, string quartet, all these different templates that are all ready-made, set up with the instruments you want. When you first pick create from template, you'll see these three options. One that's just a generic treble clef. It's basically a piano with one staff. A piano with bass clef or grand staff. I'm going to choose the grand staff option here. It does essentially the same thing as if I went to solo and picked piano, or if I went to choose instruments, keyboards, piano. They all do the same thing, but just clicking piano isn't enough. I'll have to double click it or click the little arrow and make sure that piano shows up in the list over here. So now I've got my score for, you all know what I did there. I hit the done button, so I didn't get to enter any of that additional information. I'm actually going to close this window because I don't want to do that. I'm going to do this again. New score. And now when I do it again, it is going to remember the fact that I had chosen to choose instruments instead of from template. It thinks, oh, he's an instrument chooser, not a template user. So now I'm going to go to keyboards, piano, double click it. But now instead of pressing done, I'm going to press next, because this is where you will enter the key, time signature, tempo, title, and all this other useful information about your score. Let me just pop up my chat so I can be monitoring. Here we go. And yeah, I'm sorry to hear that some people are having streaming problems, but the fact that not everyone is tells me there's nothing I can do about it. It must be something to do with, servers elsewhere. So here's where I would be able to pick a key and say G major, for instance. Here's where I could choose a time signature by entering different numbers into this box. This is where I could choose to show a tempo marking on my score. And this is nice because then if you show it, you can also change it. You can say, hey, I don't want it to go 120, I want it to go 144 or whatever. Yeah, I think also when I look at my screen over here, it's totally high resolution for me. So I have a feeling that, again, is a connection issue, that if you have a slower connection, your browser is probably downscaling things to try to display it at all. So yeah, unfortunately, that just seems to be the case, and the recording should be fine. So this is where you can enter the tempo. And then here is also where you can say how many measures you want your score to be. And I rarely think about this because, I don't know, I rarely know when I'm starting a score exactly how many measures it'll be. If I'm composing it, I have no idea. But even if I'm transcribing an existing score, I didn't count the measures, so I don't know necessarily how many. So I typically leave this alone, and I know I can add or remove measures later. However, it is useful if you know you're going to want to pick up to click the option to say Create Pickup Measure. And then you can select the duration of your pickup. So this is by default giving me a 1 quarter note pickup. You can make it be a 2 quarter note pickup. You can also make it be a common question is, well, what if I want 3/8 notes? I want it to be a beat and a half. Well, a beat and a half is 3 eighth notes. So that's exactly what you're going to put in here. It's not going to create a 3/8 time signature. It just says that your pickup measure, or anacrusis for those of you using the UK terminology, it'll say create anacrusis in here. So now I can have a 3/8 note pickup or whatever I want, or a 1/8 note pickup. So this dialog is then where I will also enter a title and say name as composer. And under subtitle, a little clue here for people. If you don't enter anything in here, you're going to see the word subtitle in your score. This was a conscious decision that the designers made so that people would know that you could have a subtitle and you can always delete it later. I kind of think that was a silly choice personally, but it is what it is. So what you can do is click in the subtitle box, press space, and then backspace, and then it will delete that subtitle. So you can do that also. The copyright. So MuseScore doesn't have a built-in way to enter the copyright symbol. So I'm going to type the word copyright. Now, if your computer keyboard does have a special built-in thing, like on Windows, if you have a numeric keypad, Alt 0169 will give you the copyright symbol, right? So there's all sorts of like special ways of getting the copyright symbol based on, just your computer knowing how to do it. Unfortunately, the way that my computer knows how to do it, I'm using a Chromebook here and it works in Chrome OS, but it doesn't work in Linux apps, which is what MuseScore is. So I'm going to use a little trick. I'm going to flip over to my chat over here, and I'm going to do the thing that gives me, what is it, Control-Shift? No, I don't even remember. Can I type copyright and get a copyright symbol in here? Hello. Yeah, it's actually doing odd things for me in here too right now. I need to get that copyright symbol, so I'm going to get that copyright symbol by typing it into some other place. That's how I know on my keyboard I can get the copyright symbol. And so on Windows, copyright symbol is Alt 0169. So on my computer, it's Control-Shift-U, A9. It's the way this works. So now I can paste that symbol into here. So you need to know how to get yourself a copyright symbol, and then you can paste it in. So let me, since audio is breaking up for people, Windows, numeric keypad, Alt plus 0169. Mac people could maybe give me an answer there for how to get that thing. But on Windows, numeric keypad, Alt 0169 will do it. You can also use the Windows character map program to get the copyright symbol. I will show you another way to get it once I've created my score. So copyright 2024, my name. I don't typically enter all that information during these demonstrations, but because these are like, I'm wanting to make sure that people know how to get started, and that's the first thing that you normally see when you get started is that whole dialogue. I kind of wanted to go through that. But now we are going to deal with entering some music. I am going to show you the other way to get a copyright symbol though. Once you've created your score, you can double-click the title or any other piece of text, and then you're going to go to the Properties panel and click where it says Insert Special Characters. And there you'll find a copyright symbol. And then you just click it. And now a copyright symbol is there in your title, and you can cut that. And then you can go to File, Project Properties. And here is where you'll see that copyright message, and you can now paste it in again. So if you don't mind waiting until you've already created the score, then you can add a copyright symbol to some piece of text, and then come back to the properties panel, the file project properties dialog here, and enter it there. So that's a lot of stuff that we haven't done any music yet, right? But I said that there were things that I kind of wanted to make sure people know, and these are really common questions that come up that I've had to answer many times over, and I gloss over them so often, I wanted to cover them here. So let's enter some notes, shall we? I'm going to skip that pickup for right now because I haven't really thought that through, to be honest. I'm going to go to the first measure, and I'm going to click that first measure. The thing to know in MuseScore, and this is also kind of a common point of confusion that people have even if you've been using MuseScore for a while. MuseScore has basically two modes you can be in. There's normal mode, which is where you are most of the time, and there's note input mode. Normal mode, I'm going to just click an empty area here. Normal mode is characterized by just seeing your score and it looks like it looks here. Or if I make a selection, like by clicking that empty spot in the measure, I get that blue rectangle there. That is telling me I have a selection, but I'm still in normal mode. In order to enter notes, you need to be in note input mode, as that's why it's called that. There's a lot of different ways of getting into note input mode. The way I am going to recommend is we're going to actually either click the note input icon here on the toolbar or use the keyboard shortcut N for note input. And notice when I hover over that button, it tells me N is the shortcut. In that tooltip there, you'll see the N there, upper right of the tooltip. You'll also see now that that button is highlighted, letting me know I'm in note input mode. That's how you can know you're in note input mode. You'll see that button highlighted. You'll also see this blue cursor here telling you you're in note input mode, and if you now start entering notes, that's where they'll go. And as you move your mouse around, you'll see a little outline of a note kind of follow you around. Those are all the clues that you have that you are in note input mode. So now that we're in note input mode, we can start entering some notes. To enter the notes, what we're going to do, the basic methodology here is we first select a duration, then we enter pitches. And you can enter as many pitches as you want, all with the same duration. You know, if you have a whole stream of eighth notes, we're only going to have to select the duration eighth note once, and then we can enter as many pitches as we want. And so I'm going to show you first how to select the duration. We have a toolbar up here that shows the different durations: quarter note, half note, whole note, etc. If I want to enter eighth notes, I'm going to click the eighth note button here on the toolbar. So now that I've selected the eighth note on the toolbar, I can now enter some notes. And since I use the mouse to click this, I'm also going to enter the notes with the mouse, and then I'm going to show you how to do it with the keyboard. And then I'll talk about a couple other ways. So I've selected the eighth note icon, and now when I come over to my score, you'll notice that the little note that's following my cursor around looks like an eighth note. I can now enter my notes, and I just put it on the staff and enter, and there goes a G. Let me turn my volume back up. And then, if I want to enter an A, I enter my A, B, C, right? So as you enter notes, you basically want to enter them left to right. You can, to some extent, enter notes out of order if you want. It typically tends to confuse people what happens, and so I want to emphasize, if you are just starting using MuseScore and trying to figure things out, just get used to doing things left to right. So I'm going to undo that. Control Z, right? Undo, or Command Z on a Mac. What if I want to, I'm going to put in a C, what if I want an eighth rest right now? Well, when I click, I got an eighth note. But if I right click, I'll get a rest. Right click gives you a rest. There's one of those things where, you know, I keep saying I suspect somewhere in here is going to be something that's new information, even for some people who have used MuseScore a while. I'll bet quite a few people didn't know that right click will enter a rest. Part of the reason is it's a relatively new feature. I think it's only been around for like maybe 2 or 3 years. I remember, I think I'm pretty sure I'm the one who implemented it, and it was maybe 3 years ago. So for the first like 10 years that I used MuseScore, first 10 years or so that I used MuseScore, right click did not enter a rest. It didn't do anything useful. So while you're in node input mode, right click will enter a rest. Also, so if you're using a one button mouse, usually, like on most Macs, there's only a one button mouse, or there's one button above the touchpad, or tapping the touchpad will work as a click. Usually, control click will act like right click, and that goes not just for entering rest, but anytime I say right click, if you have a one button mouse, it's usually control click. If you have a touchpad, it's usually two-finger tap. Two-finger tap is the same as right click. So that's how I actually did that. I went two-finger tap, and that acted like a right click. So there you go. There's a way of entering rests. And now I can go ahead and click myself in another note. Now I said I wanted to talk about how we can do this with keyboard. So this is a good thing. So the right click, if your touchpad has like two physical buttons sitting above it, I mean the right button. If there's two physical buttons above your touchpad, click the one to the right. Some touchpads let you click, like actually press down on the right side of the touchpad, and that will do a right click. Some don't, though. Some will do a left click. You'll have to experiment with your device. And this isn't MuseScore specific. All this stuff about how touchpads work is typically like this is how it works across all programs, but you might never have had to deal with this, just like I never knew how to do horizontal scrolling until someone told me. I think it was Johan. But Johan Temmerman, thank you. I think it was you. The two-finger tap for right-click on most like if I two-finger tap right now, it gives me a rest, right? But some of them, like if I click to the right, yeah, no, that's just entering a note apparently. So yeah, I don't even know. I've never messed with mine. So yeah, that's something to experiment with. All right, I'm going to now press my right cursor key to move into the next measure here, and I want to change the duration. I want to enter a quarter note now. So I'm going to use the toolbar to change to quarter note. And now when I enter notes, I'm going to get quarter notes. Now, I got to be honest with you. I didn't mean to enter an E there. I meant to enter an F sharp, but I missed. I don't like using the mouse to enter notes, in part because it feels slow and it feels very inaccurate. I could have, I tried to click the F sharp in there and I missed and got an E. But if you do want to use the mouse to enter notes, you can increase your accuracy by zooming in. The easiest way to zoom in, again, if you have a touchpad, on most touchpads, control swipe will zoom. Control swipe zooms in. Control swipe up zooms out. Control swipe down zooms in. So that is usually your easiest way of zooming, but there's also controls down here in the lower right-hand corner, right? So in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see the zoom out button, the zoom in button, and also a drop-down list where you can select some preset zoom values. And you can also just type in, if you know you want to be zoomed into 129%, type 129 in there and it will happily zoom you into 129%. If things are set up properly, 100% is life size. 100% means your score will be the same size as a physical piece of paper. I don't know that I will be able to prove that to you here. But that's That is, if things are set up properly on your computer, that will be the case. So by zooming in more, you can increase the accuracy of making sure that you really do get a G and don't accidentally get an A. I find that awkward, though. I personally find that awkward. So what I would do here is I don't use the mouse in entering notes most of the time. I use the keyboard. So let's talk about that now. If I want to enter an A now, I type A. If I want to enter a B, I type B. If I want to enter a G, I type a G. And so on. Now, what if I type a D right now? I want to enter this note here. If I type a D, MuseScore will enter the closest D to what I just entered, right? So after G, D below it is closer than D above it. It's a fourth away versus a fifth away, right? So because of that, MuseScore has special shortcuts that are very useful when entering notes by keyboard. If it chooses the wrong octave, Control up moves it up. The note that you just entered, or whatever note is currently selected, will move it up an octave. Control down moves down an octave. Anytime I say Control, Mac users need to mentally substitute Command. The only exception is when I said Control click is how you do a right click. I'm pretty sure that one is really still Control click on Macs also. Maybe some Mac user can confirm for me, but I'm pretty sure Control click is actually right click on a Mac. But again, that's like a computer thing. That's the way it just works across all programs. Anytime I'm telling you a shortcut that's MuseScore specific, I'll describe it using the shortcut that exists on Windows or Linux or Chromebooks, and then Mac users just have to manually substitute Command instead of Control. So after typing a note, if it's the wrong octave, Control up or Control down will fix that octave. Now, I can enter more notes, E, F sharp, G, but what if I want to change duration, right? It's really easy to just type the notes. It's a great feature that you could just type notes, and we all know how to do that. A means A, B means B, C means C, etc. I will say, if you are in a country that doesn't use letter names for notes, right? I know that most Spanish-speaking countries, French-speaking countries, and some of the sort of Eastern European, Russian-speaking, and other things like that sometimes use do, re, mi for note names, right? Instead of using A, B, and C, or C, D, and E. Then in that case, you might find note names not a convenient way to enter notes, and you might find the mouse is just more convenient for you. But for most of us, I think typing the note name makes sense. Actually, I'm going to give you one other option here. I'm going to press the letter P on my keyboard. When I did that, notice I get a little keyboard here. This is a pretty convenient way of entering notes sometimes in the right context. Now, if I click this A, I get that A. Let me zoom back out so I can see what I just did, because it got hidden behind my chat. B. And the nice thing about the keyboard here is then it will enter whatever octave I want. Like if I type A right now, it's going to enter that A. And if I type A again, it's going to keep entering that A. P for piano, piano. Could have been K for keyboard, but P for piano. So if I type A, I just keep getting more A's, but in that octave. But if I use the keyboard, I can get whatever octave I want, right? So this thing that's going on right here, where when I moved off the end of one system, it scrolled me down to the bottom and I kind of lost my place. Michael, that is exactly why continuous view is sometimes nice, because then you never have to do that thing of resetting to go down to the next system. So it's actually piano music is one of the situations where I'm most likely to use continuous view while entering notes. But yeah, I still find it somehow more comforting to see the page. All right, so I got a few more things to say. Well, several more things to say about node input, and then I'm going to go on to other topics. The thing I haven't done yet is talk about using the keyboard to change duration. So if I want to enter a couple of eighth notes right now, I haven't said how to do that with the keyboard. We've only talked about how to change duration using the toolbar. Well, if I hover over the toolbar, you'll see the shortcut is listed there as well. It says eighth note 4. I actually don't think K does anything, Joanne. Control K does chord symbols, but I think K is actually available. So if you wanted, you can define your own custom shortcuts. It's kind of an advanced topic. But if you go to Edit, Preferences, Shortcuts, you can define custom shortcuts, and that includes being able to redefine the note names. So you could redefine, instead of C entering a C, you could make D enter the note C because it's do, right? You can totally do that. But yeah, if you want K to open the keyboard instead of P, you can do that as well. So when I hover over these durations, you'll see that the shortcuts are there. So eighth note is 4, quarter note is 5, half note is 6. That's always the way I tell people to remember this. 4, 5, 6 for eighth, quarter, half. If you have, or can even just picture, a numeric keypad, 4, 5, 6 is like that middle row of a numeric keypad, and eighths, quarters, and halves are your most common note values. So there you go, 4, 5, 6 for eighth, quarter, half. Smaller numbers are shorter values. Bigger numbers are longer values. So if I want to enter eighth notes right now, I'll type 4. And as soon as I press the 4 key, watch what happens on the toolbar. I'm about to press 4, boom, and you'll see the icon automatically changed to eighth note. And now I can enter some eighth notes. If I want to enter a half note, I can type 6. So I'll type 6, and when I do that, notice the toolbar just changed to half note. And now I can enter a half note, and so forth. So 4, 5, 6, eighth, quarter, half. Bigger numbers are longer durations, and smaller numbers are shorter ones. If I want to enter 16th notes, it'll be 3. So, 4 is eighth note, 3 is the next shorter duration. So 3 lets me enter some 16th notes. If I want a whole note, well, 4, 5, 6, eighth, quarter, half, 7 then is whole note. So 7 switches me to whole note, and now I can enter a whole note. So we've entered notes, we've entered rests. The next question is, what else might we need to know about node input before we kind of leave the topic? Because there's a lot of aspects to node input, a lot of complicated things to do, but I want to make sure I cover the basics. One thing you'll notice is when I enter those 16th notes, it automatically knew how to beam them in groups of 4. Most of the time, you don't need to think about how to beam your eighth notes or 16ths. MuseScore normally does things correctly by default. There's some exceptions, and I've got other videos and stuff where I talk about how to override the defaults, but most of the time, you don't need to think about it. If I enter a single eighth note right now by typing 4 and then type a C, then it gets a flag. And now if I type a quarter note, C, it keeps the flag. If I now switch back to eighth notes by pressing 4 and enter some more eighth notes, C, 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 it knew to let that 1 on the and of 2 have a flag and only beam the next 4 together. So MuseScore knows to do those basic things. There are, again, special cases where the defaults might not be exactly what you want, and ways of overriding that, but for the most part, you can just go with those defaults, and it will be good. So I've entered notes, I've entered rests. 2 other things I want to do while we're talking about node input is ties and accidentals. So if I want to do a tie right now, notice let me undo that C. I'm going to enter a C right now, and let's say I want to tie that across the bar line now to a half note. The way I'm going to do that is first select the half note, and here I'll go ahead and do it on the toolbar. I select my half note, and now if I want to tie to the C, tie and make a C in the next bar and tie to it, I don't need to enter the C first, because ties are always by definition to the same pitch you just entered. All I got to do is click the tie button right here, and you'll see it says shortcut is T. So if I click this tie button right now, it is going to enter a half note for me and tie it all in one step. Click. Right? Now I've got my half note C tied. What if I want to tie that now to, say, a dotted quarter note? We haven't done dots. I'm going to select the quarter note and then select the dot. This picture shows it as a dotted quarter, but it's a little deceptive. This just enters a dot on any note. That's how you would enter dotted half notes, dotted eighth notes. You select the duration, and you select that icon there that says augmentation dot. And now if I click the tie button, I get that. So now I want to do the same thing with the keyboard. I'm going to type 4 for eighth note, type my C, and now I want a half note tied across the bar. So I will type 6 for half note, T for the tie. And then if I want a dotted quarter note, it'll be 5. I'm pressing 5 and then period. I'm pressing the period to get the dot. And you'll notice that now the quarter note and the dot are selected on the toolbar. And T gives me this. So, yes, and as far as the durations go, this conversation comes up a lot. People think quarter note should be 4. And there's 2 reasons why that's not the case. One is that you get stuck a little bit once you have 2-digit things, right? So you could totally think 4 for quarter note, 2 for half note, 8 for eighth note. But then after that, it gets trickier. What you use for 16th, what you use for 32nd, and what you use for whole note. And you can come up with answers. So you could do that. But then it's also like a bunch of jumping around, like the quarter note and the eighth note are nowhere near each other on your keyboard, whereas they are adjacent note value-wise. And so there's something nice about having them be adjacent note value-wise. Another thing is, if you are British, quarter note isn't a term, right? It's crotchet. And so 4, that association between 4 and quarter note is kind of an Americanism. It's a most of the worldism, to be honest, but not all of the world. Like in Spanish, quarter notes are black notes. I think in French also. So the association with 4 with quarter note is kind of very regional, I would say. So those are kind of the reasons why it's not set up that way by default. But you are more than welcome to set it up that way if you like. Just go to Edit Preferences Shortcuts, and you can customize all those shortcuts as well. And I know people who do that. All right, so I've done ties, I've done dots. I need to do accidentals next. So I'm going to enter another C here. I'll go 4, C, moving me to the next measure. Let's say I want a C sharp. I'm going to click the sharp on the toolbar. And now you'll notice if I use my mouse here, it shows me that I'm about to enter a sharp. If I now click C again, it's still C sharp, but it doesn't get the sharp sign. So MuseScore knows the rules of notation here. It knows that sharp sign applies for the rest of the measure. If, in fact, I click the sharp sign again and enter that sharp there, it will put a sharp sign there. It will honor your request for the sharp sign there. That toolbar button means put a sharp sign on this note, whether it needs it or not. Similarly, that's how you can create courtesy accidentals and so forth. So if I enter a bunch of C's right now, they're all C sharps. If I enter another C right now, listen to this. It's a C natural. But someone reading this is rude. This is very rude to give someone this music with a bunch of C sharps in a row and then expect them to recognize that bar line just canceled the C sharp, and now that's a C natural. Yes, if you're studying it in advance, you will figure that out. But sight reading, this is death to give people this and expect them to recognize that is a C natural. So what I'm going to do is undo that, and then I'm going to click the natural sign to say I want a natural C. And then I can type C, and I get an explicit natural. It wasn't necessary by the rules of notation, but it's polite. That's why it's called a courtesy accidental. And Michael he's asking a question. I don't know if it was a leading question or not, but if I just enter a regular old C right now, let me turn off the natural and just enter a C right now. If I select this passage and then go to Plugins, Composing, Arranging Tools, Add Courtesy Accidentals. Boom, yes, it adds it automatically. Now, I got that there by going to the plugins menu, and I have all these plugins here. By default, you don't have all those plugins. Some of these I had to download, a couple of them I wrote myself, but so you probably won't see any plugins there, but if you go to plugins, manage plugins, you'll see all of these options available, and then just click one, like there's add courtesy accidentals. That does come pre-installed. You just have to add it to your menu. So you click it there, and then you'll see a button that says enable, and then it will be available to you to use. So the courtesy accidental plugin is awesome. I use it all the time. I try to enter courtesy accidentals as I go, but then I'll use the plugin to help me find opportunities after. Steven's asking is, can you enter a shortcut to mean dotted quarter? No, there's no way to make. You can change the shortcut for dot to be something other than period, but you can't have one shortcut both select a duration and the dot. That ends up being two separate commands. In principle, I think someone could make a plugin do that. I think so. But yeah, there's not a way to do that right now. So it's going to be 5 dot. All right. So I've done accidentals using the mouse. Now I want to do accidentals using the keyboard. Notice, by the way, I never talked about getting out of note input mode. But anytime I press escape, it takes me out of note input mode. If I click a location and press N, it puts me into note input mode. N takes me back out. N goes in, N goes out, N goes in, or escape takes me out. So just know that when you're doing anything other than entering notes, you need to leave note input mode to do it, because otherwise you start clicking, you're going to be entering notes into your score. So get used to leaving note input mode when you go to do anything else, pretty much. All right, so I want to enter some notes here using some accidentals using the keyboard. So I've selected a location, I've selected that rest, press N. The shortcuts for flat, natural, and sharp are minus, equals, and plus, which, makes some logical sense. So minus, you see, highlights the flat sign, and now I can type D, and I get a D. Equals highlights the natural, and then I can type D and get a natural. And plus will give me the sharp. So those are the shortcuts for flat, natural, and sharp. By default, there's not shortcuts for double flat or double sharp. They're there on the toolbar for you, but if you want shortcuts for them, you can go to Edit Preferences Shortcuts, which I've mentioned many times, and define them yourselves. On a Mac, the Preferences menu isn't under Edit. It's under the Application menu. It's some Mac-specific thing. So those are the things I want to talk about with note input. Now I'm hitting Escape. Notice that until I did that, I was in note input mode. You saw the cursor here. When I press Escape, that cursor disappears. That's how I know I'm not in note input mode. Get in the habit of leaving note input mode when you're done entering notes and getting ready to do anything else. That keyboard is now taking up more space than it needs, so I'm going to press P and make it go away. So I've entered notes. The next thing that I want to talk about is adding other markings. And most of the markings that you want to add are going to be over here in the left panel where it says palettes. So if I want to add some dynamics, I can click that first note. Oh, let's go ahead and put in a pickup. I'm going to click that rest because I said I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted D here. So I'm going to go, I click that rest, N, and enter my D. That's not the octave I want. You remember what this is? Control down. And then escape to leave note input mode. Also, by the way, I'm going to go back to note input mode. What if I want to do the bottom staff? Well, there's nothing different about the bottom staff. The notes get entered exactly the same way. You can use the mouse to enter them. But also you can move back and forth between the staves. If I want to move back up to the top staff right now, the shortcut for that is Alt up arrow. Alt up arrow moves you back up to the top staff. Alt down arrow to the bottom, Alt up arrow to the top. On Mac, I assume that's Option up and Option down. If I just press up arrow by itself, or down arrow, I'm going to press down arrow all by itself, it changed the pitch of that note. And by the way, it added a flat while it was at it. If I press up arrow, it changes the pitch and removes the flat. Notice it didn't force a natural sign in there. When you use up and down arrow to change pitches, it picks the accidentals kind of automatically. Up arrow will spell things using sharps or naturals. Down arrow will spell with flats or naturals. All right, I'm going to leave note input again. And now I want to enter some dynamics. So I'm going to click that first note to select it. And notice it is blue. Don't know how well that's coming across on the screen, but now that it's selected and blue, I can come over to the Dynamics palette and click to open it. And you'll see all these available dynamics. And if those aren't enough for you, click more and you can have more. Right? But I just want a nice piano here. So I'll click the P and boom. It gets added to whatever was selected. That is true across pretty much the whole palette. Select something in the score, click the palette, and it enters the thing. What if I want a crescendo? Well, to have a crescendo, I want to select more than one note. I want to select the entire range. In my newsletter this week, I gave you the tip on how to do range selections, and I mentioned the simplest way, if you want a full measure, is just select an empty area in that measure. So here we go. Now the whole measure is selected. I can then use Shift Left and Shift Right to extend that selection, either larger or compress it. So if I want to make this crescendo only go up to the C, I'm going to use Shift Left to compress my, compress doesn't really seem like the right word, but reduce, whatever. Make my selection one note less. So Shift Left again, now I have just from the G to the C selected. So now if I want to enter a crescendo, I can just click the crescendo button here in the toolbar, and it will add the crescendo over exactly those notes. I'm going to undo that for a second and just point out that some of the elements in the palette have shortcuts. Not all of them, but some do. Someday we would love to be able to have shortcuts for everything in the palette. That's going to happen someday. I'm reasonably confident. But the crescendo shortcut exists, and it's the less than sign on your keyboard because it kind of looks like your crescendo. So if I press that, that also gives me a crescendo sign. Pretty much everything in the palette, there's a whole lot of stuff in these palettes, right? There's all these different clefs, you can change key signatures, and they all work the same way. Select something in the score, and then click it in the palette. If I decide, you know what, I don't want a G major key signature here, I want a D major key signature. Then I got to do is click the D major key signature. So I've selected the original key signature, click the D major one, and now I've got a D major key signature. Notice it didn't change my notes, right? I entered a C natural. I didn't enter a C sharp. That is not how you transpose music. That's just how you change key signatures. Transposing is a whole other topic. But just to change the key signature, select the old one and click that. What if there wasn't an old one? What if, I'm going to undo that, what if I actually don't want to enter my key signature change until this measure here? I can click that measure to select it, and then click my key signature, and it will add the key signature change. So that idea, select something in the score, click the thing in the palette. That is how you normally use the palette. It does also work to click something in the palette. Oops, no. Let me undo that. It works also to click something in the palette and then drag it over to your score, which is kind of a pain if you got a touchpad, and then release it, and it will add it to your score. That way, it's usually a lot slower and more finicky, because some things, like if I want to add a tempo marking, a dynamic marking to a note, if I want to add a dynamic marking to that C, like if I want to make it forte, I'm going to have to not just drag it in the general vicinity, but I'm going to have to drag it right onto that note head until it changes to a plus. or whatever your icon looks like on your operating system, and then it will add it. So drag and drop works, but it's a bit finicky. I don't recommend it. Clicking is a way more efficient way to enter things from the palette. So there's all sorts of stuff here. You'll see a tempo palette where you can enter tempo markings. You can enter new time signatures, so I can select a measure here and say, hey, I want to start 3/4 there, and it will enter the 3/4. There's a bunch of different types of text that you can enter in the palette, whole bunch of articulation. So if I want these notes here to be staccato, I can click one, shift click the last one, and then click the little staccato dot, and now they're all staccato, right? So the palette has all these different articulations, all these different markings you can enter that way. So I wanted to focus this session on kind of basics that everyone needs to know in order to use MuseScore. And the thing is, I mean, in order to go into each of these things in enough depth, it takes some time to talk about them all. But the reality is, entering music is super fast once you know what's available to you. So I wanted to make sure that you have available these basic tools, and then practice using them, right? Practice using these tools to actually enter music, and as you do this, you will get faster and faster at it. Yeah, I'm quite fast at entering notes. I'm just, slow at demonstrating because I'm trying to demonstrate, slowly enough that people can follow along. So in different sessions of this MuseScore Cafe, sometimes I go into a lot of depth on one topic. Next week's is the third Wednesday of the month. Third Wednesday of the month, I do what I call Score of the Month. And Score of the Month means I'm going to take a piece of music and enter it, start to finish. I never finish, but as many measures as I can. And in doing so, we encounter all sorts of interesting things, right? We encounter entering notes, of course, and I'm usually very fast demoing that. But then there'll be interesting combinations of articulations and dynamics and manual adjustments I might need to make, and maybe some of the deeming I need to tweak, and maybe some of the formatting I need to tweak, right? So in those sessions, we get to encounter all sorts of different topics. The stuff I showed you here is the stuff I normally gloss over because it's the stuff everyone's supposed to know already. But as you see, the topics can get a little deep, and there can be some surprising things like the right-click to enter rest. I don't use right-click to enter rest. Oh, I didn't show you how to enter a rest with the keyboard. Someone mentioned that in the chat. But you're absolutely right. If I go to note input mode here, I type 4 for eighth note and type a note, say E, and now I want to enter an eighth rest, 0 enters the eighth rest. 0 enters another eighth rest, and then I can type my F, and so forth. 0. So letter names, C enters a C. Each letter name enters the corresponding note. 0 enters a rest. Yeah, I've somehow neglected to mention that. So this session here is one that I would hope that some of you who are new to MuseScore will find this useful to really kind of get deep into the basics of how note input and adding markings work, how to create a new score, how to add notes, and how to add markings. And once you kind of get the basics of this in your head, you find learning how to do other things relatively easy because you have a good understanding of how the program works. So that was kind of my goal here, is to give you that understanding. So that said, I'm going to flip over to where I have, oh, don't I have it still? Come on. Did I close the cafe theme music? No, there it is. I just somehow didn't see it. Oh, I see. Okay. This window is on the Home tab. I need to flip over to the Score tab, and sometimes I forget that that's a thing. All right. So that said, all right, so thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for bearing with me if you were experiencing technical problems, and hopefully people got something out of this session. I said it was for newcomers, and hopefully you found that useful. I also have, tutorials, and of course I have my course. So if you're here watching this, that means you found my site and you've seen all the stuff about the Mastering MuseScore 4 course. It goes super depth. It goes deep into every single topic of that in MuseScore, all in little short lessons, little 5-minute lessons on each individual topic, so you can pick and choose what you want to learn about, go through in order. I've sort of highlighted which lessons I think are most important to learn about, and I think you'll find that really useful, so can't recommend that highly enough, my Mastering MuseScore 4 course. Tomorrow, I'll be doing my music masterclass, and we'll be talking about counterpoint, because that is what we are talking about because we're doing the counterpoint course as well, and I look forward to seeing a lot of you then and talking some more about music. Bye, everyone.